Hello everyone, and welcome to this demo of Flash Patcher. I already made a demo of Flash Patcher, but that was a while ago, and there have been quite a few updates since then, so I'm going to be going over everything again from scratch. Alright, so firstly, what is Flash Patcher? Flash Patcher is a tool that allows you to inject arbitrary code into SWF files of your choice. And why is this useful, you might be asking? Suppose we want to inject the same code into two different SWF files. Let's say, for example, the Super Mario Flash speedrun community, and we want to have two separate hacks for full game, one that's full game legal and one that's legal for ILs, but both of them need code to keep track of the IL time within each level. So how do we do that? Well, the answer is we use something like Flash Patcher, so this way we only have to write the code once, and then when we want to, we can inject it into both hacks. So, how do we download Flash Patcher? So first, you want to go ahead and clone this. So go ahead and copy that and clone it locally. I've already gone ahead and done that. And then you want to run sudo make install. And I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm actually not going to go ahead and do this rather. But if you do this, it'll install to user local bin /flash patcher. So you could just type flash patcher to use it. You don't actually have to do this. You can just call flashpatcher.py within here, which is what I'm going to be doing for this demo. If you do plan to use Flash Patcher on a regular basis, though, I would recommend installing it just to make the command shorter. Alright, so now let's go over the syntax of the command line arguments. So how do you actually call Flash Patcher? Well, this was made with argparse, so you can just use -h to get some information on the command line arguments. So basically, the syntax looks like this. The first argument that you have to pass in is the input SWF file, which is a path that is relative to your current folder. So for example, if I say input SWF /smf base hack, which I happen to have lying around, it will use this as the base for your modifications. And one important thing to note, this patcher does not work around things like deobfuscation. So you have to create a deobfuscated version of the hack, which I call a base hack, specifically to allow this modification to work. The good news is once you've done the base hack once, you never have to touch it again. Next argument is the folder. So this is going to be the folder containing all of the patches, like all of the files required for the patch. There are three types of files: stage files, asset packs, and patch files, which we're going to get into in a little bit. And finally, here you have the stage file, which is the actual stage file that you want to apply, and also the output location that you want to save. All of these parameters are required. Next, there are two parameters which are not required. The first one is --all. This is required if you are injecting asset packs. If you're only changing the scripts in the Flash file, this is not required. But if you want to do things like change how the sprites look, then you have to add this flag. Otherwise, it will not work. And the reason behind this is if you actually run it with -all, it's much slower. So this flag is actually off by default. And this second flag is invalidate cache. Now, normally you shouldn't need to touch this, but basically what happens is when Flash Patcher decompiles something, it will save that decompilation so it doesn't have to decompile your file again later. And if you do this, it'll force it to decompile and create a fresh copy of the decompiled files. So if you're noticing some weird bugs, it may be worth trying the invalidate cache flag to see if that fixes your issue. But under normal circumstances, you shouldn't need to do this. All right. So I have a shell script set up to call this. You can go ahead and ignore all of this for now. The only line that we want to look at is right here. So patcher, specifically we're calling Flash Patcher. Input SWF, we've just got the base hack here. The current folder, the stage file is fullgame.stage, and the output SWF is this. This is an example of how it's called. Now let's talk about the three different types of files that you're going to use for patching. There is only one type of file that is required, and that is the stage file. The stage file is what you actually tell it to run here when you call Flash Patcher. And what this basically does is it contains instructions on what other files you want to inject. So a stage file will look like this, for example. It will tell you, All right, I want to add all of these patch files, and if you have asset pack files, you'd put them in here as well. You'd say, for example, non-cheat pack.assets. And basically this would go in and it would just inject all of these files one by one into the SWF and then recompile it. In our case, we don't have asset pack files, so I am going to be going over those later. So now, how do these patch files work? Let's go over the first. There are two commands that you can actually use in these. The first one is remove. So here we're telling it we want to remove from define sprite 192 frame 5 do action, and we want to remove lines 21 through 40. This is fairly straightforward. It'll go into define sprite, do at frame 5, and then do action, and then remove those lines, and then recompile. Whoops. The second command is add. Now, what add does is it'll add code. The location here is define sprite 1077 level 1, frame 1, do action, and then this is the line number. So this will add after line 9. And I stress after line 9. And you can have multiple add statements before a code block. But once you're done typing in all of your add statements, you put in a begin patch, your action script code, and then end patch. And this will be injected at that location within the code. And one thing that you can also do in every file is you can add this hash right here as a comment. And basically that line will be ignored. There is one more feature that you can do within these add blocks. If you do / space cmd : space skip space and then a number, it will skip ahead that number of lines. So let's say we want to run this command and then 10 lines after that, we want to set it to true again. We could use this to avoid having to have two different add blocks. All right. And then the final type of file is the asset pack file. The asset pack file must end in .assets, just like the patch file, must end in .patch. The stage files can end in whatever, but I would recommend keeping them in .stage. This may be required in the future. And the syntax is basically the same. You still have comments. The command here is add asset. So you tell it add asset, the local location of the file, and the location that you want to put it inside of the SWF. So in this case, we're replacing 8.png within the images. And again, you do have to use the --all flag to compile with this. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and run my script just so you can see what it looks like when it's in action. So as you can see, this is just because of the shell script that I use. It'll say, using JPEGSys, this will automatically detect your JPEGSys whether you're using Windows or Linux. Then here it detected a cache, so it's just going to skip decompilation. It says decompilation finished, even though it didn't actually do anything. Then it'll inject everything, and then recompile your file, and then say done. And that's basically it for this demo of FlashPatcher. I hope this is useful to you, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.